G'day guys, I'm Matt Brand, and this is the 2020 Volkswagen T-Cross. Now, the Volkswagen T-Cross is the all-new Volkswagen compact SUV and goes against some pretty stiff competition like the all-new Mazda CX-30, the Honda HR-V, and of course the Mitsubishi ASX, which in Australia is the best-selling compact SUV. So should you buy the all-new Volkswagen T-Cross? Well, I have a few things to say about that. Now, as always, we will start by taking a look at the exterior of the Volkswagen T-Cross. Then we're going to move on to the interior and see how it drives. And finally, we're going to end on, should you buy one? And if you are new around here, make sure you go down there and subscribe to the channel. I release an awesome new car review every single week, so you can see as soon as they're uploaded. And of course, if you do enjoy the video, like the video, because it really helps the channel out, helps me get even more cooler cars, and it's a good thing. Anyway, let's just get straight into it. Now, starting with the front, this here is the Volkswagen T-Cross Life. And in Australia, the T-Cross Life is the base model, although it does come higher spec than a lot of other markets. But it still is a base model, and as a result, you are missing out on some things that you would get on the higher spec style version. For example, the halogen headlights here are okay, they're functional enough. They don't look very great though, and they certainly are very dated looking compared to the LEDs that you get as standard on the style variant. But I still think it's a better overall looking front than the Polo brother that it's based on. I especially like the big flowing grille up the front that kind of encompasses and wraps around the entire front of the car, and with its big, beautiful VW badge. Of course, this would not be a crossover if it didn't have crossover styling cues. And at the bottom, we have this like black that breaks up the front, kind of looks like a secondary grille, and it houses the very crossover looking light array down there. You have the LED daytime running lights, and then above it you have the halogen bulb fog lights. Very crossover, very compact SUV. And overall, even though there isn't much going on with the front of the T-Cross, I actually think that it's a really nice, smart, clean design. Very Volkswagen, because it's actually on the boring side, but then on the other hand, it doesn't offend. And it really does look like a compact SUV, which is pretty incredible. And it's pretty incredible because it's not much bigger than a Volkswagen Polo. Truly, it is only 5 centimeters longer, 1 millimeter less wide, and just 11 centimeters taller. So proportionally, it isn't that much bigger than the Volkswagen Polo, yet it looks just like a baby SUV. They have done a really good job. A lot of cars don't do a very good job. For example, the Suzuki Ignis, which claims to be a small SUV. No. But this does just look like another Volkswagen SUV, so big props there. Speaking of SUV, the side is very SUV. I like the 16-inch Rochester wheels down the bottom that are dual tone and just look really nice and help to break up the blistering white that is the paint of this car. And they just help to add a sporty, fun look to the car. Of course, like every crossover, there is black plastic cladding down the bottom in case you really want to go off-roading in your T-Cross. No, not that either. It's just a nice crossover design cue that pretty much every manufacturer out there does. But as we move up, we get these sharp edges and creases that you could cut your finger on if you ran it across. It is really modern, sleek design. I really like it, and carries over again from the Polo. And then up the top, we have black functional roof bars, which is a good thing to have. It means you can mount things to the top of the car, and it can actually act as a practical SUV, something that you don't always get on competitors. But again, what amazes me most is that from the side, it really does look deceptively big. It looks like an SUV. Again, we're talking about a car that isn't all that much bigger than the Polo it's based on, yet it looks worlds bigger. So I'm a big fan of that. And then the rear is honestly my favorite angle of this car. Let's just start with the most obvious thing, and that is the giant wraparound light bar looking thing, which isn't actually a light bar, but rather a tinted like glass look. Oh, I absolutely love it. Of course, it houses the nice, good looking LED tail lights in there, and in the center, it is red, but it's not functional lights. It's literally just a reflector, but it's the exact same color as the light. So during the day, it just does look like a nice light bar. In fact, it kind of reminds me of like a bandit's mask because it covers quite a significant portion of the back. But again, oh, it's so nice. And then up top, we have a black spoiler, which helps give it a sporty look. And one of my favorite touches of all new Volkswagen is the model is spelt out in nice big chrome letters on the back, letting everyone know that you have a T-Cross. Again, it just is such a nice design touch. Down the bottom is a silvery looking thing, which I guess is trying to mimic looking like a diffuser. Doesn't really, but it does help to break up the color scheme at the back as well, so I don't really mind it. And thankfully, there is no fake exhaust on the car. In fact, there's no exhaust at all. Of course, there is an exhaust, it's just hidden, but it's nice to see that manufacturers are moving away from the fake exhausts and not pretending to be a sporty car when they're not really. Kind of like in the Picanto GT that I reviewed, and you can click up there somewhere to watch that review. Overall, I really like the look of the Volkswagen T-Cross. It is a really handsome, good-looking car. What Volkswagen designers have been able to do to make it look like an SUV, even though its underpinnings would really suggest it's more like a jacked-up hatchback, is really cool. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think of the Volkswagen T-Cross? Does it look like an SUV to you, or does it look like a jacked up hatchback? I'm interested to know what you guys think, so comment down below right now. Now let's move on to the interior, but before we do, if you haven't already, do go down there and subscribe to the channel. And if you have been enjoying the video, please do leave a thumbs up. As I said, it really helps the channel out. So let's just get straight into it. Now, starting with the good, and there are 6 things that I really like about this interior. Number 1 is the overall layout and look. It is incredibly functional, very typically Volkswagen in here. Everything is laid out just as you would expect it to be. Nothing is surprising, and that is a good thing. It means you can get into the car and you know exactly where everything is. You don't have to fumble and faff around to find things. Great design. It's all just really functional and practical. For example, I love the way that the infotainment screen just kind of swoops its design into the instrument cluster. It looks like one piece, and that's really, really nice. And the metallic looking trim here is just a nice way to break up what would otherwise be a sea of black hard plastics. We will be getting into that shortly. And then number 2 is the ergonomics and functional layout of the interior. For example, the armrest here, you can jack it up and down and you can pull it forward and back. It's really good. So you can find a perfect position for your arm to rest. The steering wheel is incredibly adjustable. I'm not going to do it now because I'm driving, but it's really adjustable. These seats, you can move them up, down, forward, back, of course, but they move really far in every direction. So you can find a perfect seating position. You can go lower, you can go higher, and you have lumbar support as standard, which is massive props. There are massive side door bins as well that you could fit whatever you wanted into there. You want to put a small child in there? Go ahead. Don't do that. That is highly illegal. But you know, you've got the space. There are storage trays underneath the seats at the front. There are storage trays underneath the seat at the front, so you can get whatever you really need inside of there. And that means that you can just put things inside of there that you would otherwise have rolling around the interior. The owner's manual is in there, so you have an open big glove box, although a lot of the glove box admittedly is taken up by a CD player, which I guess is good to have. There's storage on top of the dash. And then you have nice things like dual USBs up front, a wireless charging pad as standard. The interior is incredibly Volkswagen, incredibly practical. Number 3 are these seats. And these seats, again, name of the game, super comfortable. And they are, for base seats, really, really good. Now, they're not body hugging and help you stay planted in a corner, but over longer journeys, as I said, lumbar support as standard, plenty of leg support, plenty of back support, soft cloth. It's really, really good. And these are the base seats. And as I said earlier, incredibly adjustable. So getting a perfect seating position is easy. Number 4 is the steering wheel. And for all my long-term subscribers out there, you know how much I care about my steering wheels. And this steering wheel is pretty damn good. The steering wheel itself is a nice leather steering wheel, really nice to grip and hold in the hands. It is flat bottomed as well for that sporty, extra sportiness. Excuse me while I turn this boat. Oh my God. Well, I made it. And it is very functional as well. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of buttons on the steering wheel for you to adjust pretty much anything you need to adjust, so you don't have to take your hands off the steering wheel. For example, on the left, we have our cruise control and safety systems. On the right, we have our media controls. Kind of. Because on the left, we have the volume up and down, and on the right, we have the track skip, which is just odd placement for it. I don't know why it's not all on the right-hand side where the other media controls are. It makes things a little bit more confusing. And speaking of steering, I really don't like the cruise control buttons. And the reason is it's pretty damn complicated. For example, if you press the plus and minus, you go up by 10-kilometer increments, which is a good thing to have, but then you wonder, well, how can I go up by 1 kilometer? Say I want to cruise at 100 zone at 103 kilometers an hour. Well, it takes a while to figure out, or maybe I'm just really slow, but you have to press res, which is resume, or set. These buttons usually on pretty much every other car control resuming the cruise control and that's it, or setting the cruise control and that's it. Whereas here, it's an unlabeled button for you to go up by 1 kilometer. It's just a little bit confusing and takes some time to get used to. Rant over though, it's more of a minor inconvenience. It still is a fantastic steering wheel. Number 5 is the gauges. Now, I do like these gauges because as far as analog gauges go, they are really nice to look at. They're very bright, they're easy to read, and so I like them in that sense. They've also got a nice LCD display that really does display a whole heap of information in there, from obviously your speed to things like how much fuel usage your air conditioning is using, which is something I have never seen before, but it just goes to show that they pack a lot of information in these screens. However, there is a $1,900 sound and vision package that does come with digital displays, and I cannot recommend getting that package enough, because apart from the digital displays, you also get the awesome Beats 300-watt sound system. And if you want to learn more about that, do go and watch my Volkswagen Polo review up there, watch my Volkswagen Polo review and you can see just how good those gauges are. Number 6 is the infotainment screen. The infotainment screen on all Volkswagens, while kind of basic, are really good. All you need to have a good infotainment display is something that is functional. It doesn't have to be the greatest screen out there, high definition, whatever, just something that kind of is a jack of all trades. And that's exactly what the Volkswagen one is. You get Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, which is by far the things that you actually want the most in any infotainment display. It's quick to respond. It does have some useful information when you press car. Unfortunately, the TCross doesn't get digital radio, which does feel like a pretty big omission. And you don't get navigation as standard. It is included as part of that sound and vision package, which again is like a nice thing to have. You don't need it because you get Android Auto, but because you really do want those digital gauges, you also want the navigation, which will come as standard with those gauges. Now let's talk about the bad, and there are 2 things here, which is pretty good. One is the build quality, and this is a pretty serious bad thing. The build quality in here is pretty awful. Now, the fit of the materials, that's not an issue. Everything fits really well, just as you would expect from Volkswagen. It's just that everywhere you touch is hard, nasty plastics that make my skin crawl. Ugh. Admittedly, where you touch most, the armrests and the steering wheel, it does feel quality, but everywhere else it's giving me goosebumps. It's so hard and scratchy. It's really not very nice and very disappointing. I noticed it as soon as I got in here that it does feel cheap. And then number 2 is the air conditioning controls. Now, admittedly, on the style variant of the car, you can get the dials digital, but these ones here are analog and they just help really date the interior. It's not very pleasant. They're intuitive enough, but like, you know, it's pretty bad. But that's kind of a minor complaint. As I said, you can get digital air conditioning controls if you step up the variant to the style variant. Of course, this is an SUV, so we have to discuss the rear. And the rear seats, there is enough headroom and plenty of headroom thanks to that 10 centimeters of extra space. Like, the Polo is already a very practical car, and this car just makes that just a little bit more practical. It is very functional back there because you get 2 USB ports, you get a little storage cubby that I don't know what you could fit in there except for air, but I guess you can fit something in there. And the rear bench seat, it does move back and forward. It's on a slider. It's really, really cool. And just helps give you more rear room if you need it and you have smaller children, or if you have bigger people, you slide it back. It's easy. Oh my God, it didn't like that. And then the boot space. 385 liters of boot space back there, which is pretty good. In fact, it is better than the Mazda CX-30, which has abysmal rear boot space and is better than the Toyota CHR. However, it isn't that much bigger than the Volkswagen Polo, which is 351 liters of boot space. So don't go thinking that you're gonna get a much more practical car than the already very practical Polo. But it is a little bit better, and you do get a movable false floor, and that means that you can have a flat loading bay with underfloor storage. It's pretty good. In fact, it's very good. But of course, what we're all here for is how the Volkswagen T-Cross drives. Come on. Come on. Yes, we're at 80 kilometers an hour, we're at the speed limit. Now, the T-Cross here in Australia comes as standard with the 85 TSI engine, and at the moment, that's all you can get across the Life version here and the Style. The 85 TSI engine is a 3-cylinder engine pumping out, amazingly, 85 kilowatt of power and 200 Newton meters of torque. It has a 0 to 100 kilometer hour time of a pretty respectable 10.2 seconds. And for all you people stuck in Imperial lands, a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of around 9.7 seconds. All of that is driven to the front wheels through a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. Now, the engine is punchy enough, although admittedly it does leave a little bit to be desired. It is a little bit sluggish. It certainly is nowhere near as fast feeling, as zippy as the Polo, and there are a couple of reasons for that. The first is that the Polo is almost 100 kilograms lighter than this car here. And then number two is that the Volkswagen Polo is a more aerodynamic car. Yes, the dimensions are very similar. However, the T-Cross is jacked up a little bit and 10 centimeters taller. And so I'm not gonna lie, when I got into this car, I expected a little bit more performance, and that's just, yeah, don't expect performance out of this car. It is not it's not a fast car, but it's an okay car. It certainly is not underpowered, but it's certainly not overpowered either. Of course, that raised ride height does translate into pretty good ride quality. Driving around town, it is really, really comfortable. Over bumps, it is fine. It can take any road with ease, except for maybe off-roading, because this is not an off-roader. Not that pretty much any compact SUV ever is, but yeah, this certainly isn't. But just cruising around town, it's exactly what you would want. It's a small SUV. It's really comfortable. It also has a great turning circle, thanks of course to its Polo underpinnings. But even though it takes corners well, I wouldn't, oh, there's a lot of body roll. I wouldn't put your foot down like I have been doing. Of course, I'm doing it for testing purposes. It makes more noise than it does speed, I'll tell you what. But handling is, of course, vague, and there is a substantial amount of body roll. But whoa, that is exactly what you would expect out of an SUV. It's not trying to be a sporty car. So driving is pretty average. There isn't too much to complain about. Handling is okay, ride quality is okay, but, oh yes, there is a but. Of course, being based on the Polo, this does have the exact same dual clutch transmission. The dual clutch transmissions generally are pretty bad, but Volkswagen do a pretty reasonable job. The dual clutch transmission is smooth. It's not too hesitant at low speeds. It's okay. However, say I come to a stop in a street, the auto start stop system turns off. So you put your foot down, and then it goes. Whoa. Now, admittedly, the stop-start system just doesn't feel as bad as it did in the Volkswagen Polo. And in that video, I show a clip where I put my foot down and nothing happens for almost 2 seconds. And I'm turning right across traffic. It's terrifying. It's not as bad here. Or maybe I'm just more used to it and therefore I know how to combat it. You can either turn it off here, but you do have to do that every single time you drive the car, or you just slightly remove your foot off the brake and that will re-engage it, or the car in front of you moves. So it's not always bad. It's just in that sometimes where it can be really scary. And frustratingly, when I'm driving the car and I'm stopped at a traffic light goes green, I'm paying full attention, put my foot down, and nothing happens for a couple of seconds, and the car behind me goes beep. And then once the car starts getting moving, your foot is like almost fully down because you're like, ah, and the car is like, oh my God, and just makes the loudest, raucous noise. It's a pretty unnerving experience. But apart from that, and don't get me wrong, that's actually a pretty big thing, but apart from that, it does drive decent. So, is the all-new T-Cross worth it? The T-Cross starts from $29,990 Australian dollars drive away. And admittedly, you get a lot of car for your money. You get what is one of the most practical cars in its class. You get German design and manufacturing. Is it made in Germany anymore? I don't know. At least German design. And the complete functionality that this car brings to you. Of course, I wouldn't take this base model. I would at least get the base model with the sound and vision package, because then you get the digital display. You get the 300-watt Beats audio system, which is actually really, really good, and you get navigation. It helps move this car from like the mid 2010s to the 2020s. Personally though, I would rather take the Volkswagen Polo style that I reviewed, because it is effectively the exact same car, except it comes with the digital displays. It comes with the inbuilt navigation and the Beats audio system. Sure, it's not as practical, but it still is almost as practical, and it drives better, bar the raised seating position, which I personally don't care about, but a lot of the people who do want to buy a compact SUV, they do. So I understand that. And not only that, it has a more premium feeling interior because they use slightly better plastics in there, which doesn't sound like a big thing, but it's something that I immediately noticed as soon as I got into this car. And then all of that is $26,990 drive away. And that to me is like unbeatable value. I would much rather have the Polo style, which again, it's almost the exact same thing. Sure, it's not an SUV, but it's not far off it if you call this an SUV. And then I would use those like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 of savings for fuel for a few years. Like, that's what I would do. But, big asterisk there, but if you are in the market for a small compact SUV, then I can absolutely definitely recommend you the Volkswagen T-Cross. It performs really, really admirably. It's got pretty much everything you need, and it's a good looking car, which is important. But let me know what you guys think. Would you rather have this here in this spec for $29,990 drive away, or would you rather have the Volkswagen Polo style that I reviewed for $26,990 drive away? Comment down below which one you would take. I know which one I would rather take. Of course, if you are new to the channel, go down there and subscribe. I'd love to have you around. As I said, I release a new cool car review every single week. Hit the thumbs up button as well if you did enjoy the review. It really, really helps the channel out. And as always, I'll see you next week.